Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be looking at brand authenticity and what it means to your consumer. So I'm joined by Wizz today, and we're going to be looking at the overall topic. Wizz is very much me talking about the strategy for your brand, how you can use these terms like authenticity and what it means to your brand. And I'm going to be looking at some market research that we've conducted on some general public to get the consumer point of view, as well as looking at the regulatory impact as well. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Carys and I work for Ayton Global Research. We're a consumer research company who have a global outreach but are based in the UK. So we mainly look at substantiating claims and that kind of research for efficacy claims, but also indeed in looking at market research as well. So it's where these terms can become really helpful. So I'm the regulatory director. So again, looking at all the regulations all the time, mainly to do with advertising regulation, but also in the kind of cosmetics field that we do, looking at cosmetic regulation to make sure the research we're providing, you can use it for all of your claims substantiation as well. So I've worked at the company for about 8 years now. I started off as a study manager, so got to know our clients and how they work and what their research objectives are, and found that actually the regulations are the really important part. So made that the specialism that I can offer the company, and that's what I do now. Wizz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me. So my name is Wizz. I'm the founder of a brand and retail strategy agency called Wizz&Co. So we work with global brands, retailers, and also emerging brands, helping scale them to established. So we always put the customer at the heart of all of our decisions with any strategy that we go into. It's so important to make sure you're listening to the customer, looking at the shifts of what's happening in the retail industry and customer behaviour as well. So my background, I spent 12 wonderful years at Selfridges. I was latterly head of buying there for beauty, which I absolutely loved. It's such a dynamic product category. Having worked in fashion and accessories before, it was certainly the one I loved the most. There's so many new brands emerging all the time, new product launches. It can be quite confusing for the customer as well. And obviously Selfridges was all about customer experience. So that is certainly ingrained in me. I've also worked for brands as well. And then, since I've started my strategy agency, we've worked with large UK retailers, established global brands in skincare and fragrance. And like I said, we're really trying to support the emerging indie brands to help them scale and ultimately pitch and launch with retailers to help leverage their business.
Excellent, thank you. So if you can start us off with by just talking about the market trends and how that kind of relates with today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought we'd go through 3 topics today that kind of are linking to brand authenticity and what it means to the customer. So first of all, we're going to cover off kind of customer behaviour and then move on to the customer journey and how you can kind of create consistency and also authenticity. And then finally talk about how you can use some of these learnings that we've discovered through this survey, which has been amazing, to make your brand really stand out to customers. So I'm going to give a few action points at the end. So if we kick off with customer behaviour, it is something that absolutely that customer, your customer should be at the heart of your strategy, and having a real clear vision of that customer is absolutely integral because it can help in a lot of your business decisions. So I'll start off talking about the market, because the beauty industry and the market has changed dramatically over the last few years, which is one of the reasons I absolutely love the industry, because a lot of these trends are being led by the customer. So it's really important that that's why we're studying them. If you think rewind 5 to 10 years ago, it was all about the big corporate brands. It was all about who had the biggest advertising budget and who could shout the loudest. So if that was anything from having a brand ambassador that they paid millions of pounds for, such as Julia Roberts or some other big face or name, and just I suppose shouting the loudest. But actually, since the rise of the internet, there was a day when we didn't have it. I know it seems unusual now, but the rise of the internet, social media, it's really allowed customers to connect more with brands and understand them and delve a lot deeper as well. So this mystery of how brands are made, how formulations are made, where do their products come from, it's now so much easier for customers to find out more about their products, which is really exciting because there absolutely should be this, I suppose, transparency for them. So we've really seen this shift, and that's where we've seen the rise of indie brands come along, take market share super quickly. We all think about Drunk Elephant as, I suppose, that #1 skincare brand that 7 years from kitchen table to huge valuation, sold to a big group. And also rise of influencers, which I think again is shifting again. You had all of these people in their bedroom. I mean, we're all doing the same now, aren't we, on Zoom? But all these people at home, like trying their products, they were real people, and that really gave trust to customers as well. So people stopped trusting so much the big brands that they knew were advertising. So that was the whole rise of the influencer movement. But then we're kind of seeing that evolve again, because actually some of these influencers are now the celebrities, and the customers again are losing a little bit of trust with these big influencers because they know that they're being paid, and some of that authenticity with influencers is being lost as well. So we're seeing the rise of micro influencers, and also there's so much power in that word of mouth as well, which can be really valuable to a brand. So yeah, it's constantly evolving, but all of these trends are actually to do with the customer, because it's the information that customers have been able to have access to, and what they're trying to find out. And the brands that are adapting to that, or the new ones that are coming along because they see a gap, are the ones that are winning.
Excellent, thank you very much. So to go back to kind of the overall customer idea of brand authenticity, I just want to bring up that market research that we conducted. So we asked 209 people, mix of genders, mix of ages, a few questions about brand authenticity. But the main one was obviously, what does brand authenticity mean to them? So we did it as a free text answer, so we could pick out those general trends that people were saying. And the top 3 that we come up with were honest, genuine, and trusted. That's what brand authenticity means to the consumer. So obviously, it's kind of transparent there. Honest means a lot, but it's really thinking about those trends, I think, when you're looking at your brand and what does authentic mean to you. So 88% of those people also said they thought that was really important, the brands they bought are authentic. So again, it is hugely important. If you're not coming across as authentic to your consumers, that could be 88% that you're going to lose in the kind of long run. But really importantly, what we brought out from that with the trust trend, we asked the consumers again, what would make you trust a brand? And the top 3 that came out overall were product reviews, transparency on production, ingredients and sustainability, and scientific evidence. So Wizz, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, and it was great to see the results, because it kind of really cemented a lot of the, I suppose, the strategy and the trends that I talk about a lot anyway. And again, this really goes back to why some of those indie brands are scaling quickly, because they're able to communicate some of those themes very clearly to customers. They can be really honest. They often have a brand founder at the helm, who is usually talking quite passionately about why they've created that brand. So they can be really transparent and honest and authentic about what they're doing. And beauty is just such an emotive category. So actually, that has been really valuable, that honesty, I think, to brands. And again, as we've seen with influencers, it's that honest feedback that people are really valuing. And I think you're seeing there's this also, I suppose, transparency now, where you never used to know which brands were owned by the big groups, but now customers do, which I think again is really exciting that customers understand that. So then it's about those brands really, I think, talking more publicly about what their corporate strategy is as well. So if they are a house of brands, if they are one of the big groups, then what is their corporate strategy? What is their stance? So they can really tell their own brand story, because customers are looking at that. And a group that I saw recently that actually I had a Instagram advertised post come up was about Unilever, and it wasn't about any of their products, but it was talking about what their sustainability values and what they were putting in place to really I suppose change some of the damage that has been done from plastics globally, and also putting their hands up that they have been a big problem for that, but didn't really, I suppose, understand the impact. So I thought that was a really great way for them to be demonstrating that actually as a group that we're taking responsibility for this and we're doing all of these things to move forward. And I think that's what customers are really looking for as well. So whether you are that indie brand and you have that founder and you can passionately talk about that and create that connection, or actually if you're at the other end of the spectrum and a more corporate brand, customers really want to understand and know what the values and what you stand for are.
Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because we're talking a lot about influencers and things like product reviews and stuff like that. And from a regulatory standpoint, from my side, it's something that I think people are putting a lot into, thinking we need product reviews, we need influencers, but then forgetting about those really important sort of regulatory aspects that we've always had in place that protect the consumers from relying on those as adverts. So the ASA has released a statement recently about product reviews and how they can't be seen as claims. So people will try to avoid claim substantiation, what we do, and just have the product reviews there. But the problem is if you have people reviewing products and saying these things like my skin felt really soft and smooth, but there's no claim substantiation there, it then becomes a claim and it's then open to being reviewed by the ASA and things like that. So again, with influencers, it's something that we see a lot where people pay influencers to review their products and put it online. But it's such a dangerous territory to go on without looking at the regulation there, because you could actually be seen as using them as misleading advertising if you haven't got those claims in place. It's really important that they give those honest reviews and you don't kind of say, right, these are our claims, say this, because that's, again, it's not going to be genuine, it's not going to be authentic. But it's just knowing that you've got all of that evidence and science behind your claims without relying on the marketing tricks of product reviews and influencers as well. But we touched a little bit on brand story, and I know that's something that you work a lot with brands, so it'd be great to hear a bit about that as well.
Yeah, certainly. Again, brand stories, it's storytelling, and that's, again, any big brand that's been hugely successful over the years. It's all about what is their story and how it's communicated. And again, this is that shift that, like I said before, with the brand founders that can tell their story so eloquently and so clearly because they have that genuine passion. So it's really about how they can communicate that. But then it's also about a lot of the established brands. People start to forget, or it's a new generation, that actually there's a founder behind their brand, that someone did create it once upon a time. So it's really going back to that heritage as well, and I suppose not forgetting the past, and the purpose and why the brand was created, but also it's really thinking about what is the purpose and what is the mission going forward, and how does a brand, whatever shape or size, communicate that to the customer, because that is the power of a brand story. Is what's happened already and how they've got to that place, but then how do they see the future evolving, and taking that customer on that journey, because there are lots of stories to tell as well. So it's leading a customer through, right, this is how we started, and then I suppose a journey of discovery, so they learn more and more about the brand, rather than just talking sometimes about the products. It's certainly about having a hybrid of both, and people shop in different ways, and it's, as Carys was saying, it's really important to have the product reviews from real life customers, but also get those claims backed up as well, because people have different purchasing habits. Everybody's different. Some people will be analytical, some people will be emotive, some people want every single detail, somebody will just buy it because their friend said it was great. So it's trying to kind of create a bit of a hybrid, and there's as much information as you possibly can to the customer, because then that's a great opportunity for them to make an informed decision on their own.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good thing to touch on as well, about how everyone's behaviour is a bit different, because again, we did that research and asked people what was authentic. There were so many people that were like, oh, I just need them to be honest, not really giving a lot of detail, and other people would be like, they need to have scientific evidence behind their claims. So it really is, it's such a difference. But at the end of the day, it is all about being very transparent, I think, and having that story and making sure you do have evidence behind those claims. And I think that is what would really appeal to every consumer from that sense. But certainly when you say about story, I mean, the brand that springs to my mind is always Huda Beauty. I think they've done a fantastic job of being small and then going to this big global brand and always relating it to their founder and you know, the reason she started up, obviously, for things like different skin tones and things like that. And I think that's such a good example. It's always one that springs to mind, and it just shows that you don't have to stay as an indie brand. You don't have to well, you obviously are an indie brand, but you don't have to stay as this kind of small brand. You can be global and keep pushing all of those messages forward. And again, back to our market research. So we did ask people about brand story as well. And we asked them, does the brand story influence your opinion on the brand? And 57% said yes overall. But when you break that down again, 61% of the females said yes, and over 60% of 36 to 70-year-olds said yes as well. So it's almost breaking, it's an important amount. 57 is a lot, but then it gets even bigger. So depending on who your target audience is, it's really important to know that you've got that brand story to influence the opinion of your consumers, to who your brand is. Particularly if people, again, if you're have your brand on social media, it's so important to keep pushing that, because people do follow you, and if it's going to influence their decision and your story is not very strong or it's not very clear, I think you could lose source consumers on that side as well, from what we can see with that data. So I think we can kind of move along to the next point of the customer journey, and how to create consistency. So if Wiz, you can introduce us into this section.
Yeah, so this is really thinking about the customer journey and how you can create consistency and authenticity within this as well. So, I mean, the customer journey is diverse. It can be quite different for different people, but it certainly is very often, particularly in beauty, a considered purchase if it's of a certain price point. There's certain, obviously, FMCG impulse buys, but actually once you start to get into a luxury product, there's lots of different factors that people are going to be looking at, and they really will start to consider what they're going to purchase and why. And actually, a customer needs to see a similar message from a brand, or just recognise that brand between 7 and 20 times before they purchase, which sounds like a huge amount. But if you think about how much content is out there, we're just constantly bombarded with information, but it can be quite hard to remember what you've seen. And I'm sure if you've been on Instagram or LinkedIn today, like how many of the things that you scroll past, can you actually remember what the content was? So it's really important to think about, as a brand, how many different touch points that customer may potentially have visibility of your brand or your product. And that could be anything from being written about in a magazine or a newspaper. It could be in a shop or on a website. It could be on somebody's blog. It could be with an influencer. It could be their friend talking about them. And then that's something that then there'll be a few different touch points, and they might start to follow you on social media. Then it's about, once they've been following you on social media for a while and seen quite a bit of content, it's then how are you leading them to your website? Are they then going onto your email database? So it's really thinking about how you're getting that customer closer to your brand. And what information are you serving them to be able to get them through that process? And I see a lot of brands that sometimes worry they're, I suppose, repeating the same message, but actually there needs to be quite a bit of repetition, but I suppose in subtle and different ways. It's not about just posting the same thing over and over again, because if you have the same email or text to a friend, you certainly wouldn't be interested if they just kept saying the same thing. So it's how you kind of create that variety, but along a longer theme as well. So it's really important, I think, as part of authenticity as well, is to make sure that you are really consistent with what you're communicating, and being really clear as well, not overcomplicating things, so making sure you're having quite a simple message. Excellent. So it can feel a little overwhelming with all the different opportunities, but it's certainly about breaking that down and trying to make it manageable.
Absolutely. And I think, again, making it more about the regulation side, as I always do. But it's so true. Like you said, there's all these different platforms and all these ways of reaching out to your consumer. I've seen it a lot with clients that we've worked with before that have been putting out all this information about their product, and then suddenly realize they haven't got those claims substantiated. And they haven't got the evidence behind their claims, but everything's been pushed and pushed and pushed out into the product and to the public domain. So really important to always think about advertising regulations. So obviously in the UK we've got the ASA, and at the end of the day they're always saying that adverts need to be legal, decent, honest and truthful. Now these are really the words that we're actually associating, our consumers are associating with brand authenticity. So actually it does already link in together. The other thing to think about if you're producing products for the EU, but again, I always say the EU cosmetic claims regulations actually is really applicable worldwide. They've got a really brilliant common criteria that I think should be produced with any kind of when you're producing your claims in any kind of global climate. Certainly things you can think about. So their common criteria are legal compliance. So obviously making sure that you don't just say you're complying with the law. Obviously you have to be able to produce those cosmetics. You need to be truthful. So if you're going to say your product's got aloe vera in it, it has to have aloe vera in it. You need to have evidential support. So again, that's what I keep pushing about, having some claim substantiation. You need to be honest. So if you're going to say that 98% of 100 women agree with the claim on your product, you need to have at least 100 women that you've asked about that. You can't sort of ask 50 and make it bigger. It needs to be fair. So this is all about things like free from claims that have come up recently, and sort of saying free from parabens might actually be unfair on the industry, because it's kind of suggesting that those that have parabens in the are unsafe. So that's always quite an interesting one when we're thinking about being authentic. And again, informed decision making. So I know Wizz has touched on that as well. You need to make sure that your consumers can make a really informed decision about why to purchase your product. And certainly if you've got a brand story in there, it needs to be honest and truthful, because you can't sort of spin a story and get people to buy your brand if it's not true. So yeah, it really links in quite nicely, I think, with the regulations as well. So Wizz, I'll say back to you.
Great. So I think we're going to kind of touch on the third point is, so I suppose, how can you actually use some of these findings that we've discussed, and how to make your brand stand out to customers? Because obviously that's the aim of the game, is to gain market share. So it's ultimately about connecting with more customers and converting them to sales. So again, the number one thing that we talked about earlier was brand story. So it's really thinking about the power of your brand story, and it's who's going to share it, whether that's you or its ambassadors, and where it's shared as well, and what are the different platforms. Because I think there's a huge opportunity, if you're an established brand, to use influencers, but again, the right influencers for your brand. The ones that are really genuine, and also I think some of the smaller influencers as well. I also think there's an amazing opportunity with which I think some of a lot of brands, again, kind of the larger ones and the smaller ones as well, is really thinking about how you can get customers to relay the brand story as well. Because once you have made that emotive connection with a customer, there's a huge power in that. So I always talk about not just having brand loyalty, which is when your customer comes back and repurchases from you. What you want to create is brand advocates. So you want those customers to be talking about you and raving about you to their friends, because that is really the power of a brand story. And that's through PR. It's people talking about your brand behind your back. So it's taking those customers from one-time purchase to loyal to them to advocates. So it's certainly a great opportunity for the established brands, but also the smaller brands as well. And one of the big things I see a lot of indie brand founders missing is that they are their own influencer. So the small brands, they get really obsessed with, I can't afford an influencer, everyone's using influencers, everyone's getting their name out. And I'm like, you're missing your number one trick. You are an influencer. So how do you also create a profile for yourself as a founder, where you are telling everybody what you've learned on your journey of discovery of developing products? Because again, the people who are creating the products used to be behind a closed door in a lab with the big brands back in the day. But actually, even now, some of the big brands are bringing those to the forefront. You're now starting to understand some of the fragrance noses that have made some really famous perfumes, which is exciting. And a lot of doctors are now talking about claims and what brands have created. So again, it's really use yourself, or who have you got in your team that can actually be your own influencer, because people want to know those stories, and that is one you've got a lot in your pocket. So go search around the office, or think about what you can do yourself, because I think that's a really exciting opportunity, and it's what customers want, because it's transparent, it's the truth, it's what's actually happening, it's behind the scenes. So it's super exciting.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said, I think that's the brands that really stand out to me. Certainly, the ones that are actually really promoting themselves, and it does feel more authentic. If we go back to that word, influencers are great, but at the end of the day, they're reviewing a lot of different brands all the time. So almost puts you in a kind of comparison position as well.
Definitely.
Sorry.
Go on.
No, you carry on.
So the other thing was to talk about was the transparency and the scientific evidence, which is so great to see, I think, in the data that's coming through already with the customer behaviours, because I look at trends and what's happening in the future a lot, and I've been seeing this in the pipeline for a number of years, and I feel like beauty is very much following the food industry. And the food industry, everyone has been studying exactly what's in their products. I mean, nobody had an allergy when you went out for dinner 5 years ago, but there's numerous different eating requirements and menus, and clarity on which farm the products were made, which is super exciting. And that's exactly the way the beauty industry is going, and what customers want to find out, and why shouldn't they? The skin's the biggest organ, so it's a beauty product. Like, it's beauty's inside out and outside in. So that's why customers really want to get to that level of detail. So from a brand point of view, it's really helping them understand what the ingredients mean, because you do need a science degree to be able to understand that. So scientific claims definitely is a way to be able to substantiate what does this actually do, because it can be really confusing. Going to the level of detail of ingredients, and there's certain tech platforms that now integrate with websites to be able to help people do this. And I've also seen indie brands starting to talk about what the translation of the scientific name as well, and also why they put that and chosen that ingredient into their product. So that, I think that is really exciting. And then again, it's about giving as much information as possible to that customer. So for example, online, making sure product pages are populated as much as possible. I think this is a massive thing where some brands or retailers fall down, and it's just quite a basic product page. Like, you've got the customer all the way from nowhere, those 7 to 20 points of wherever they are, and seeing your product. They've got your website, they've got to the product page, and then there's no information, or very little. So it's about making that as populated as possible and easy to read. And that's everything from your reviews, but also these claims. So it's one thing having it kind of on your advertising, but making sure you're really pulling that through to your product page as well, because people really want to understand that. And also integrating into your packaging as well. So if somebody is in a store and picking that up, like, what do they see? How can they make sure that the key information is there? Whether you use QR codes to be able to then find more information. I think it's really important, because people want that information at their fingertips. And it's quite often now, if you are in a store, I mean, if many people are shopping in stores at the moment, but when they are, everyone's always got their phone out at the same time. So they're Googling stuff, whether it's more information or price. So when you do Google each product, what comes up? Because people have this hybrid way of shopping. So it's about, again, trying to give as much information as possible around that science and transparency.
Absolutely. I mean, we see a bit of a difference. There's some clients that we have that will do their product test. Again, it is regulatory, but use it. It's marketing material. You can use it wherever you want. You can use it on your packaging, you can use it on your website. And we've got some clients, like I said, that would do the claims substantiation, and you go on their website and they haven't got anything about it on there. They've just said, it might soothe skin, this and that, not really anything else. Whereas some of our other clients will have all the percentages, 91% of this was the best moisturizer they've ever used, testimonials they've got from that research. So not even just relying on organic product reviews, sort of Sue from Timsbury has said that, you know, she got the best compliments she ever had on her skin, and they really utilized it again on social media. We've got clients that put it all over their Instagram, the percentage claims on their Facebook, and then some that just, I feel, you know, that some really big players in the game that still aren't even using that research, when actually it's something the consumers are really noticing. I mean, like I said, when we did this market research, there was consumers coming back to me and saying, you know, I don't see any product claims, I don't trust the brand. Now, this is something that I've been telling clients, but I never really hear it from the consumer point of view. And it was really great to hear that in that kind of sense as well. So yes, certainly anything that's out in the public domain, don't feel like, you know, claims are just that scientific evidence that you need to tick, and I've ticked that box on regulatory compliant. Really push it in your marketing as well.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly a challenge with the larger corporate brands. They have different teams, and I don't know who your contact is that does the research, but it might be the product development team. But actually, maybe the marketing team. They don't sit near the marketing well, no one's sitting next to each other anymore either, are they? But they're maybe a bit far removed from the marketing team. So it's about how that knowledge can be shared across all the different platforms.
That's really true. No, that is
almost it's harder in a bigger company.
Yeah, and like I said, sometimes we'll work with the marketing department, sometimes it'll be R&D. There's no kind of distinct rule on who has to be the contact to conduct research. And absolutely, I think that's so true. There's some people that have regulatory departments, and so that's the people that deal with it, and they don't talk to marketing. They just say to marketing, yeah, you can go ahead with the print, but they haven't added anything to it with that research. They just kind of, as I said, take box the claims they've got. And again, it's not really relating to that product story. We've talked about brand story, but where's your product story if you're not really kind of going back and forth with your consumer and making sure all that information's out there? But yeah, I think that's great. And I think, well, that's everything I had to say from my side. So I don't know if you want to open up for a question and answer for everyone, if you're happy to.
Yeah, more than happy if anyone's got anything to quiz us on.
Excellent. Well, there's a Q&A box if you just see at the bottom of the screen for anyone that does want to ask a question. But just while we wait for anything to come in, this has been recorded. So I wasn't very clear. This has been recorded, and I'll be putting this up onto YouTube and sending out the link to everyone who has joined today as well, and whoever has registered. And also I'll give you our contact information, so for myself and Wizz. So if you've got any questions that you don't want to ask today, but that you'd like to ask separately, or any projects you'd like to discuss, yeah, please do feel free to get in touch with us. I'll leave it a few seconds, but I don't think anyone's coming in with any questions. It's always on the kind of put on the spot when we say that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I don't think anything's going to come in, and I don't want to hold everyone up too much. But like I said, I'll follow this all up properly. But thank you so much, Wizz. I think that's been such an interesting insight to have, and certainly something very different to anything we talk about with regulation or testing or anything like that.
No, I mean, I found the report fascinating of all the different statistics, and it's just great to see it in black and white as well. It's, like I said, it's everything that I bang on about all the time. So it's great to see. Yes, I'm on the right track. It's good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm certainly happy to share that report as well for anyone that's viewing. It's just kind of a breakdown of some questions that we asked, and the panelists that asked it. So it might be interesting for people that are looking at what can make their brand be trusted and stuff like that. A bit of a further breakdown analysis. So please feel free to reach out if you'd like that report as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I'd recommend requesting one.
Thank you. Well, lovely. Thank you so much for that, Wizz. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on. And thank you to everyone who's attended. We hope you found it really insightful.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.